Look at all that dough. Well, Uncle Sam's credit card maxing out, as we all know. Now a growing number of Tea Party lawmakers are pushing for a balanced budget amendment to stop the out-of-control government spending.
But former Senators Judd Gregg, a Republican, and Tom Daschle, a Democrat, are both speaking against it. Is this the Washington establishment coming out against the Tea Party? Utah Senator Mike Lee, a Tea Party caucus co-founder, joins us live in the studio. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
So you are behind this plan where there would have to be, explain it exactly, because it's a little complicated.
What I'm saying is that before we raise the debt limit, we need to cut, cap, and balance. And most importantly is the balance part of that. We need a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution.
Right.
In the past, Congress has said, well, let's just balance it. Let's not require ourselves to do it.
Right.
And I have to ask the question, how has that worked out? We've added an enormous amount of money, about $10 trillion to the national debt over the last decade or so. Some of it is a result of Republicans, some of it is a result of Democrats. But we've added to it, it's exploded. And it's killing us. We're continuing to spend money we don't have, to the tune of more than $1.5 trillion a year. We have to have permanent structural spending reform. The only way one Congress can bind a future Congress is by amending the Constitution, and that's what we need to do.
The interesting thing is that 37 or 38 states require those states to balance their budget every year. So it's not like it's a novel idea. Why are people against it?
Well, they shouldn't be, and pretty soon, I believe, they won't be. In most of the states, it's not news when they balance their budgets, because they do it every single year, and it shouldn't be news in Congress when we stop spending money we don't have.
Now, Senator, I understand you will not vote for raising the debt limit unless this constitutional amendment passes, right?
Yeah, that's right, because what we're doing when we talk about raising the debt limit is we're extending the line of credit the United States government has. We have no business extending that until we take some kind of permanent step to make sure that we don't continue to spend money that we don't have, burying our children under a mountain of debt.
So what do you make of Tom Daschle, the Democrat, and Judd Gregg, the Republican, both sort of coming out together and saying that your idea is a bad one?
Well, if you read what they've both written in their op-eds, what they're saying essentially is, let's not require ourselves to balance it. Let's just balance it. And I have to ask the question again, has that worked in the past?
Good luck.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked at all.
Right now, it looks like we are spending 25% of GDP. Right now, this administration is. Whereas under the proposals you're talking about, you would shrink that back to 18%. You think that is a more livable, more sustainable future?
It's more livable and it's more sustainable. It's roughly the 40-year average of federal revenue to gross domestic product. And we think that's much more consistent with the sustainable pattern of spending.
And because we've gone from the 18% up to 25%, that's where these gigantic trillion-dollar deficits are coming from.
That's exactly right, because we've committed ourselves to spending money that is far outside the bounds and doesn't even take into account the amount of money that we're bringing in.
All right, let's listen to what Tom Daschle said. Here's his quote. Tying the hands of lawmakers by restricting their ability to respond to changing economic conditions would be a disaster. Well, some people might see it just the opposite way, that it's currently a disaster with more and more spending. Also, let's look at this poll. Do you support a balanced budget amendment? Well, 65% of all Americans said yes, they support that balanced budget amendment. 27% were opposed, 8% were unsure. What do you make of that? When you see how many Americans want it, you must keep pushing forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Americans are overwhelmingly nervous about raising the debt limit, and they're overwhelmingly supportive of a balanced budget amendment.
Right.
But more to the point, we've got a lot of promises that politicians are talking about right now. If we raise the debt limit, we'll make big cuts, but those cuts will always be spread over 10, maybe 15 or 20 years.
Sure.
We can't bind what a future Congress does unless we adopt an amendment to the Constitution that requires those cuts.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are watching this right now going, I think this makes a lot of sense to me. I hope it passes. Now, in the Senate, it would require a supermajority, because then it would be placed on state ballots across the country where 3/4 of them would have to pass it as well. What sort of support do you have right now up on Capitol Hill to get this thing through?
Well, we have all 47 Republicans in the United States Senate that are behind this balanced budget amendment proposal, the one that you just described. We're working on a number of Democrats. We've got some that we believe are about to break in our favor. We're also working on Democrats in the House of Representatives. We've got some that we believe are about to break in our favor, haven't announced it yet. We have a lot of Republican support in the House. We believe we can pass it in the House, and we are confident that as this idea builds support of saying no debt limit increase without a balanced budget amendment, we can eventually get to that point where we can force this to happen.
That's called leverage. Senator Mike Lee.